The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets, casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick your check. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome back, DFS Army. It's FantasyFling. We are doing a Millie Maker review and MME strategy. Looking back at week 4, let's take a look. All right, so week 4 was crazy. We were almost duped. We had a dupe train, as we're going to get into in a second. We had a guy who had basically 32 duplicated lineups in the Millie Maker. And before the afternoon games, he was in first place. And he basically went from 1.5 million all the way down to $300,000 by the end of the slate because he didn't win. We're going to actually look at this real quick. The guy that we had who won, he was a Hoop 2410. He's been playing for a long time. He's been trying to take down the Millie Maker for about 10 years, and he finally did it. So it's pretty cool to see him win. But he had a crazy game stack, and it was when we get into the MME strategy, this was the strategy for a lot of people as top pros, as we're going to see. But his was the one that brought it down. He scored a total of 252 points. Had Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Brought it back on the other side with 3 players, which is crazy. Very rare, extreme outlier to see that. Jamal Williams, Josh Reynolds, TJ Hawkinson. So just a crazy, crazy game stack. They need a couple one-offs here. Austin Eckler and Josh Jacobs. Eckler smashed 34, almost 35 points. Josh Jacobs, he was really the best leverage play on the slate, as we'll get into it, 37 points. And then the Eagles D, 15 total points. So total of 252 points. And this is what happens. Crazy game stacks, super thick game stacks. When a game really goes off as that game did, you're going to have a ton of points. That game scored 93 points. So if you have someone that stacked that game crazy, you will see over 250 points in a game like that. So I write this up each and every week at dfsarmy.com. Make sure you are checking this out. Give me a follow on Twitter at FantasyFling, as I tweet this out every week when I write it. But the lineup, as we kind of talked about with the stacking, it was back. So this is so much correlation. Geno to Metcalf to Lockett to Williams to Reynolds to Hawkinson. Geno had 34, 24, Lockett 14, Williams 26, Reynolds 21, Hawkinson 42. Just crushed it. You have a stack of 6 players. Total points, 164. You have that 6-player average of 27 points, which is really what we're going for across 9 roster spots. You basically want an average of 27 points per players so that you can hit that 250 point target, which is what you're looking for in a large field GPP like the Millie Maker. So I had tweeted this out really a couple times, kind of talked about this when I wrote my Millie Maker trends, looking back from 2020 and 2021. One of the things that we often see is we will see when there is mega chalk because there's value and you have underpriced players on the slate, specifically running backs, underpriced to their actual value that week, because Jamal Williams, for example, was in and as a starter because Swift was out. And same with Khalil Herbert. You are going to see the entire field beyond these players more so than they would any other week, as far as like just being in on 1 to 2 players. And because of that, if those players smash, you are going to see Millie Maker winner with a much more higher ownership than you would see in most weeks. So we can almost predict it. If there's going to be like a Dalvin Cook out and Alexander Madison, slides in and he has a good game, the field's going to be on Madison that week and total ownership is going to be higher. So this is something that we know, and this is something that we keep in mind, because when you build your lineups, you have to be willing to eat that chalk. Now, if your strategy is to avoid that chalk, that's fine. But just know that if those players go off, you're just not winning the Millie Maker that week. You're not winning a large field GPP, whatever one that is that you're in. As we saw here, Geno Smith, 6%. He was low owned, but Eckler, 15%. He was high owned. He smashed. Jamal Williams, the highest owned by far, 38, almost 38%. And then you kind of had the same thing with TJ Hawkinson, because there was no Omron, there was no DJ Chark. So the offense was really going to go through Jamal and Hawkinson. So he was willing to eat that chalk, and he got, almost 20% ownership. But between these two, you have 37, you have, almost 57% ownership there. So DK Metcalf, he was a leverage play, 5%. Tyler Lockett was pretty popular. Domination Station was all over Tyler Lockett at his ownership. So, a lot of optimizers were cramming him in, of course. Same with Josh Reynolds. Relative to his price, he was really cheap in his value this week. So he ended up being chalkier than expected, 11%. And then Josh Jacobs was such a smash. And I talked about this, several times throughout the week, when I was doing the Yahoo projections for one. The Broncos, they have a good defense, and we knew that Patrick Surtain was going to cover Devontae Adams a lot. And, where else are the points going to go? So, what's the offense going to go through? Who is it going to go through? Well, it went through Josh Jacobs, and he was the best leverage play on the slate. And then the Eagles D, 3%. So what we saw, higher than normal. I think it was like 95% in the first few weeks. But again, when running backs start to miss games, the chalk running backs will be into winning lineups and the ownership will go up. So it's certainly something to keep in mind. As far as top leverage plays, we had Geno Smith at 6%. Juicy Haze. Love it. Got to have it. It's not the blue moons that Geek likes, but it's my ritual doing podcasts. Geno, he was leveraged because there was Lamar, there were Hurts, it was Allen, that Baltimore-Buffalo game. That was obviously the highest projected game on the slate, and really a lot of people want to attack that, so it got chalky. But nobody really was playing Geno, and obviously, as you can see, 6%. And then Josh Jacobs, again, I talked about it. He was the top fantasy points per dollar play for running backs at DFS Army. I really thought he'd be about 10% owned, over 10% owned, because of that, just because optimizers were, wanting to cram him in. But 5%, and he absolutely smashed. So top leverage play, especially at 5,500, you get a 37-point performance from a guy who's 6% owned, and 5,500, just extreme leverage. And then DK Metcalf, really low, 5%. And the thing was with wide receivers, we didn't have a smash. We didn't have Kupp smashing. Jefferson wasn't on the main slate. Stephon Diggs definitely underperformed for what you thought he might do in that Baltimore game against their weak secondary. So leverage was to be had with Metcalf this week at 5%. And of course, Metcalf, he had a pretty good week. He was the top receiver at 24.9 points. So great leverage plays there. And then as far as pricing and value, this is something we continue to see. No running back, no wide receiver above 8K. So there's a lot of value in the 5 to 7K range. The highest priced guy being Eckler this week. You were able to pay up for Eckler because Geno Smith was only 5,400. Because Josh Reynolds was 4,600. Josh Jacobs, 5,500. So you had that salary relief to be able to pay up for Eckler, who smashed. This lineup was, from a value standpoint, it was crazy because it didn't even spend all 50,000. It was like 49.9. And then you had 3 players with at least 6X. So Geno Smith, 6X. and you had Josh Jacobs 6x, and then you had TJ Hawkinson at 10x. So from a value standpoint, really awesome. And then that ceiling we talk about, that ceiling, this is something to keep in mind. If there's going to be a lot of points scored, obviously, in any game, heavy game stacks, or you will see they will win. If it's going to be lower scoring, which it really, the NFL has been lower scoring overall, over all the games. You're going to see more team stacks. You're going to see more small stacks, which we've seen that in 2 weeks of the winning Millie Maker. 2 out of 4 weeks, we've seen just a quarterback and a wide receiver, essentially. And then the other 2 weeks, we've seen 2 games go nuclear, Baltimore and Buffalo. Or I'm sorry, Baltimore and Miami. And then this week with Seattle and Detroit. So it's something to keep in mind if you think a game is really going to go off, especially the Detroit and Seattle game that went, over 40 points over projected. That's when you want to heavy target that in a game stack environment, which you will see when we get into the MME strategy here. That's what a lot of the top pros did, because you had 2 poor defenses. And even though Geno Smith and Jared Goff, no one's really scared of those guys as world beaters, it didn't really matter this week. So that is something you will target when you think a game could go nuclear. Otherwise, it's not going to work. As we saw the week before, only 210 points were scored to win the Millie Maker. So we'll keep an eye on that in regards to ceiling. It's definitely something to keep in mind. Let's take a look. So first thing I want to do, you see obviously the top lineup here, but Chipotle Addict. So what we're going to do is for some reason or not, Fantasy Labs, their numbers just aren't correct with their top lineup, but the exposures are. So we're going to use DraftKings to look at some of the top lineups, some top pros, and then we're going to look at their exposures. So Chipotle Addict actually had a positive ROI on the day. He made about $6,500. In fact, had we not had the 32 duped lineups, he would have had a much better ROI day. And I believe he placed like 53rd with this lineup. Yeah, he placed 53rd and scored 241 points. So pretty crazy to not even make more money, considering he only scored 10 points really out of first place. But you could see this is a constant with a lot of the top performing lineups this past weekend, even though a lot of people may have gone off of this game. And I'm one of them. I was all about stacking Goff and, a lot of the pieces until Omron was ruled out and until DJ Chark was ruled out. And that's the mistake, obviously, I made, as, I just didn't think there would be, what is the offense going to look like without some of the best players? No Swift, no Omron, no DJ Chark. Well, the top pros, they didn't worry about that, and they were rewarded handsomely. So we had Goff in this stack with Josh Reynolds, TJ Hawkinson, and then it was a bring back so Jamal Williams, Josh Reynolds, and TJ Hawkinson. So Goff plus 3. And then you had a bring back with Metcalf and Lockett. Now, where he was different from the winning lineup is he had Barkley as opposed to Eckler. So this is, he paid an extra $300 as Eckler was $7,700, and, is 15 points less. So had he just swapped out Eckler for Barkley as a one-off, he would have won the Millie Maker this week. Giants D, and I see why I did this, because he had correlation here with Barkley and the Giants D, which they did great as well. I had a lot of exposure to them as well. So 241 points. As far as, let's look at some of his exposures. So now he actually had a $10,000 plus day. So some of his exposures, he was big on Brandon Cooks. And you'll see the reason for that is because he had Brandon Cooks and, he had Eckler. So he had a lot of stacks in that game specifically. That was a game that he wanted to target Los Angeles going against Houston. But yeah, so Eckler 55%, or I'm sorry, Cooks 55%. And then it's pretty obvious, right? He was heavy on the Detroit game. So 60% exposure to Hawkinson, Josh Reynolds 44%, in regards to the field, 19% and 11%. Same thing with Lockett. So 45%, 15%. And one of the reasons we look at these exposures is, oftentimes people, they just have the naysayers will be like, well, if you're doing MME 150 lineups, you could just get that one lineup that hits perfect and you have that big day. That's obviously not the case here, as you see 150 lineups, and he was very heavily into this game, and that's why he's one of the top DFS pros for a reason. So Lockett, he was heavy on Eckler. Josh Jacobs, way over the field on that, 34%. Geno Smith, that was his heaviest play for the day at quarterback, and totally paid off. Obviously, 32% he was in on him. The field was only 6%. He was also in Jonathan Taylor. It didn't work out. They don't always work out. That's how it goes. But DK Metcalf, also Jared Goff. So between Goff and Geno Smith, is over 55% exposures to these two. Khalif Raymond, a lot of exposure to him as well. And then Justin Herbert. So again, we saw the heavy Cooks exposure. He had Eckler, he had Herbert. And then I'm sure if we go down here, we'll see Mike Williams. He had a lot of Mike Williams too, so 22%. So big day for him, obviously. And let's take a look. Now, one of the things that I noticed when I was going through the top lineups, going through the leaderboards, is there was this guy, General Elp 7. So we'll take a look at him. P7 is what it was. Yeah, so he literally put 9 lineups. No, he not quite mass multi-entry, so he had 100 lineups, but close enough, right? And I mean, he had 9 lineups in the top 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 lineups in the top 100. And considering there was 32 dupes for third place, like, what a run for this guy. So kind of want to show you same idea. His top lineup: Geno Smith, stack with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. He also had bringbacks with Jamal Williams and Josh Reynolds and TJ Hawkinson. So very similar. You see a lot of the top pros were on the same players: Eckler, Josh Jacobs. What killed him was Cowboys D. The difference between, winning it and not winning it is the Cowboys D versus had he played the Giants D, for example. So that's kind of how it goes, but just absolutely incredible by him. Same thing. And then on the other side, the second best performing lineup, he had Goff, Reynolds, Hawkinson, bring back with Williams, Metcalf, and Goff, Williams, Hawkinson, and bring back with Metcalf and Lockett. And then obviously Eckler and Dameon Pierce had a big day as well. I had him, but I didn't have enough Detroit and Seattle pieces. So I did not win the Millie, as you can see. Now, when we go look at his exposures, he had 100 lineups, tons of Lockett, 74%, Hawkinson, 77%. Kind of what we're seeing with his lineups at the top, right? DK Metcalf, 56%, Jamal Williams, 84%, Geno, Josh Reynolds, Eckler. He was heavy on Eckler, Khalif Raymond. So you can see a lot of the sharp players, a lot of the top pros, they were really in on 2 games. And that's why they had an absolutely incredible day. This guy had 20,000 profit for the day, which is pretty awesome. Putting that many lineups into the Millie Maker and not winning it. I mean, that just goes to show, because the payout structure for the Millie Maker is quite horrible. And we talk about this. When you play the Millie Maker, you're playing to win it. You're not playing to finish in the top 100. But, based on variance, that's the difference. Oftentimes, just that one player between winning it and finishing in the top 100. So, incredible day. And obviously, he was on the top 2 games, Seattle, Detroit. And then he was heavy on the Chargers and the Texans as well. So a couple other pros I want to take a look at. Now, I noticed these guys are from the same site. And, I'm Team DFS Army. right? So I ain't here to promote. I'm here to promote DFS Army. That said, if someone is a top pro and they're very good and there's things that we can learn from them, we're going to learn from them. Giant Squid is one of the top DFS pros in the world. Currently by Roto Grinders, he's ranked 4th right now for NFL. So let's take a look at his top lineup as well. And Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, bringing it back. Oh, and he also had Penny. So he had Penny. Penny was in a lot of top lineups, top GPP lineups. So he had Penny as well. And then on the other side, brought it back with Hawkinson. But he also had Josh Jacobs and he had Brandon Cooks. So that was one of the differences in his lineups, which Cooks had a great day too. And he was pretty low owned. So he actually outperformed Lockett as far just from fantasy points per dollar and just overall production. And then again, he had the Cowboys D and he had Barkley as well. So, this is a lineup. If he has Eckler and the Giants D, this is good enough to win it. So that's just how it goes. So as far as his exposures, Giant Squid. Yeah, pretty good day for him. 4,500 positive ROI. So he was heavy on Barkley. And, Barkley was a great play. And he had like 130 yards. And this is the difference in variance, right? If Barkley gets 2 touchdowns to go with his 130 yards, we're talking about Giant Squid winning the Millie Maker and him being the top dog. But that's just how it goes in DFS. So Barkley, 85% exposure, field 16%. TJ Hawkinson, he was all over him, 70%. Richie James, this made me feel a little better. One of the top DFS pros in the world was also on Richie James. I had so much Richie James, like 80% plus exposure to him. And I had some tournament lineups, and it was a profitable day for me. I had some tournament lineups that if Richie James had just scored 10 points instead of 1 point, I would have been in the top 5, That's just how it goes. So, they don't always work out, but he was getting a lot of target share. There was no one else to throw to. The fact that he had, less than 1 point was just baffling. Process was correct. The results aren't always there. Top DFS pro playing him makes me feel a little better. I'll cry a little less at night. Josh Jacobs, smash play, 42%. He was all over him. So that's obviously why he had a good day. And then Khalil Herbert, kind of the same thing. Now, Khalil Herbert, as I mentioned, we're eating chalk. We're willing to eat that chalk. Is the field, even with the field being 39% on Khalil Herbert in the Millie Maker, he was almost double that, 72%. But he was in a great spot. He was cheap, and he was going to get a lot of volume. So that's when we're going to eat that chalk. So same thing with Lockett. He was heavy on Lockett's. Brandon Cooks, Khalif Raymond. You see, again, you're seeing a lot of the same players, a lot of the same games. So this kind of, the reason why we look at this is we're thinking, well, why were they in on these games? I know specifically with the Chargers, Houston, it was kind of strength of schedule. They just hadn't really played anyone that was that good offensively. And, we thought the Chargers might get going this week, and they did. I had them listed, I had Herbert and, Williams and Eckler listed as some of my top leverage plays from my Yahoo article. And, I know a lot of people were in on them. And again, the same thing with the Seattle-Detroit game. A lot of people were excited about that game before the pass catchers, before some of the big playmakers were ruled out of that game. And the top pros, they still stayed on that game. And, that's probably what, where, we can learn is it's keep some exposure to those games just in case, because even though they had some starters out, that game still ended up popping off anyway, just because those teams had bad defenses. So it's like enter, option B, option C, the defense is still not good. So, there are a lot of points to still be had. So moving on to the last person I want to take a look at is Megan Joy. Now, she is just incredibly sharp through the first month of the season. As far as the top pros go in the Millie Maker, I think she has done really the best. When I've been looking at like Osmo and McLovin and whatnot, she has had the best ROI overall. So her top lineup, she had Jared Goff, Josh Reynolds, TJ Hawkinson, and she brought it back with Rashad Penny. So she kind of took the stance that I like this game from a stacking perspective, but probably not going to be 93 points scored, right? And I think if you run that game out 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, the chances of it scoring that many points, pretty slim, right? So this is probably more in line with what we could see with the normal distribution of that game. So Goff to Reynolds to Hawkinson, bringing it back with Penny. She had Eckler, who smashed. What really crushed her was she played Zeke, and he only got 10 points. Devontae Adams, 22 points. He got a lot of yards, but didn't get in the end zone. And then Brandon Cooks, again, he had a good game. We talked about it. He's getting a lot of volume. He definitely is the number one in that offense. And she played the Jets C. So 231 points. Pretty awesome. 117. But really, she had a positive ROI on the day, as we'll see here. So she had a lot of good lineups. Yeah, $150, $470. Anytime you can spend $3,000 putting 150 lineups in the Millie Maker, taking a shot at winning a Millie, and you're profitable, you'll take that for sure. Brandon Jacobs, she was all over that game. Obviously, Jacobs 65%, the field 8%, Austin Eckler 42%, field 15%. She had a lot of Devontae Adams. I didn't think the matchup was very good. So, but, it's play your studs type thing. And, he had a pretty good game. He just didn't smash compared to his salary, $8,300. It's going to be, you have to have a smash game. You're going to have 30-plus points. She actually had a lot of Davis Mills, which was surprising. Looks like she might have played, I wonder if she played both sides of this game. She obviously had Mike Williams. Yeah, so she played both sides. She had Justin Herbert 18%, Mike Williams at 22% exposure. She had Jordan Akins, obviously Cooks, and then yeah, she was in on the other game as well. TJ Hawkinson. It wasn't just one lineup. She had 49% exposure to TJ, and Lockett 28%, Khalif Raymond 20%, Josh Reynolds 20%, DK Metcalf 14%. So yeah, heavy on the two games. That's the theme of the day. Palmer 15%, Gerald Everett 11%, Gino 13%. So on and so forth. That's going to do it for Week 4 MME and Millie Maker review. Like I said, check out, if you guys aren't a DFS Army subscriber, I know a lot of people watch YouTube and are subscribers to the channel but aren't DFS Army subscribers. This is a free article that I do each and every week. So go to dfsarmy.com and you can scroll through the articles. If you're not following me on Twitter, give me a follow at FantasyFling, as I tweet this out every week when I do. But if you're not a DFS Army subscriber, now's the time to be a DFS Army subscriber. Use code FantasyFling for 10% off VIP subscription. Geek had a takedown on the showdown last week. It was multiple takedowns on the Monday night. And we've had 2 Millie Maker winners to start the year. We had Rapid Fire XD won the Millie Maker, and then we had a showdown that was split for the Millie. It's been an incredible season. You need to be a DFS Army subscriber to get all the tools that DFS Army subscribers have, specifically the chalkboard, leverage, most important thing, the domination station each and every week. And now we have the power rankings, which is done by StatStational, one of the top sports betting and DFS players in the world. So now's the time, guys. That's going to do it for this week. I hope you all have a great week and learned a lot.